The 2025 NFL Draft has wrapped up 257 picks in the books. Let's go through my 10 biggest storylines from the NFL Draft. Here we go. Welcome in. It is the Monday, April 28th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. Yes, we are in a different location for today. We'll be back in the office tomorrow, but the NFL Draft 2025 officially in the books. What a draft it was. Plenty of surprises, a lot of drama. Obviously, the talk of everything right now is Shedeur Sanders, but we are going to have a 10 takeaways from the 2025 NFL Draft here on this Monday edition of NFL Spotlight. Tomorrow, Tuesday, which is usually a guest, we are going to do a full recap of the entire draft, all 32 teams. We'll talk about each one over here tomorrow, and then starting next week, we will be back with the Spotlight guests every single Tuesday moving forward as we officially enter the quieter portion of the NFL offseason. But let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It is great to see you. I am in a place right now where there is some background noise. I'm not sure if you guys hear it or not, but we'll be back in the regular office here tomorrow.
I don't know, man. I like it. I think you try to emulate what you've got going on there in the background and just get rid of the white cabinets. Just take a screenshot of this and try to emulate it. Bring in some painters, get a little fake tree. It'll be great.
I kind of like it. I'll be honest with you. It's a pretty good look over here, but
it is pretty good.
Yeah, it is. I do. I'm usually not a big fan of using my laptop for this stuff, but came out pretty good. But let's get to the draft, man. There was quite a lot that happened. First of all, before I get into it, just the one biggest takeaway from you as a fan just watching it, if you had to do one, was it the Shedeur stuff? Was it Travis? I'm curious to hear from an average fan.
It was when it started. It was the immediate, we had gone through this process. If you guys listen to our live react, it was very stunning from the word go with that second pick to just be okay, the Browns, they're getting their Travis Hunter. They're getting this big cornerstone player for the franchise. And then we started hearing more and more about the Jaguars. We had heard about it beforehand, but I wasn't buying it. So when all of a sudden it came down a ticker of the trade has happened, it's holy, this is massive. And then from there, everything else was a ripple effect with the Mason Graham pick and all that stuff. So Shedeur was interesting. We'll get into that, I'm sure, but there was a lot to take away. I'm curious to hear what are 10 things that you immediately, brought out of this process, and what are the storylines you're really thinking from going forward from this day. Or days.
So we'll do 10 here today. Again, we'll do a big episode here tomorrow for our Tuesday episode. But I'll start off the quarterbacks, obviously, because that's what we all talked about throughout the pre-draft process. 14 quarterbacks taken in this draft. Obviously, the big one and the big topic was Shedeur. But we're going to go through some of them here. Number one, Cam Ward. I do want to give some of his flowers here because he really didn't get much of it during the draft with all the Shedeur Sanders talk. I was watching both broadcasts, ESPN, even when he was picked or the lead up to the pick, they were talking about Shedeur. And then, of course, when he was picked, there was the big trade. So nobody really talked about Cam Ward at all during his night. But this is a guy who was a 0-star recruit out of high school. And now here he is as a number one overall pick for the Titans. Bounced around 3 different colleges. He could have declared last year, be a mid-round pick. He was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm going to Miami. Then he has this electric year. And this is somebody who is truly all about football 100% of the time. And the Titans brass at the start of this process, you remember this, Ben? They were like, we'll look at maybe trading the pick. We have a new GM. We're going to draft a generational talent. They fell in love with it, and this was their guy. And Will Levis last year was the quarterback for this team. Brian Callahan inherited him, and it was just not the guy. And they were like, Travis Hunter is great. Abdul Carter is great. Wicku is a bunch of different players here, but the quarterback is where it matters. And we're in the AFC where there is Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud. We believe that Cam Ward could be with those guys and go against those guys and actually make some noise here. First in the AFC South, which has been dominated by the Texans the last couple of years. But then, of course, in the bigger picture of the AFC, they believe he's the guy. And the real story here is that every other team also believed that. And we'll talk about the Giants here in a second with Jackson Dart. The Giants tried to trade up to number 1 for over a month, and they were willing to give up the number 3 pick and the future one next year to move up. And the Titans were like, no, we're taking Cam Ward. So that tells you how good he is over here and what they're expecting out of him here going into 2025. Jackson Dart, of course, was the second quarterback taken in this draft. A lot of drama when they moved up to 25 about Are they going to take Shador here? Obviously, we talked about Shador number 3 overall for a long time, but I think this was truly a Giants coaching staff pick. And the Giants front office did a lot of work on the quarterbacks, the entire class for over a year. And that includes guys who were not in this draft, like a Carson Beck, who was in Georgia last year. They did a lot of work on him as well. Eventually, of course, he transferred. Like they did extensive work on the entire class. But Shador was the one quarterback they did extensive work on. But once the coaching staff got involved, which is after the season, I don't think Brian Daboll was truly a big fan of Shador Sanders. And I think the front office was, but eventually he fell in love with Jackson Dart. And it was pretty clear because they not only took Abdul Carter at 3, they were trying to trade back into the first round at around pick 15, 16, 17, because they really wanted to make sure they get Jackson Dart. There were a lot of connections there who are very close to Brian Daboll, whether it's the offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr., a few other people in that program who are close to Brian Daboll. And then throughout this process, Daboll spoke to a bunch of the quarterbacks. From what I understand, he spoke to Dart the most. And I think he looked at him as somebody who ran that offense at Ole Miss, which a lot of people say is not made for the NFL. They actually tweaked some things here over the last year because they believed Jackson Dart was able to do it and be in a more of a pro style offense where they kind of sprinkled in some of that into the Ole Miss program, which Brian Daboll liked as well. So there were a lot of things over here when it came down to this pick. I think the Giants front office and the coaching staff, I think everyone at the end had a consensus here, but this was more of Brian Daboll had a lot of success with Josh Allen in Buffalo. He had a lot of success with Daniel Jones in year 1. We're going to try to get somebody who could run the RPO stuff, who could do these different things over here and bring him in. And as soon as he was drafted, we heard them say Russell Wilson is the guy. But obviously, we're going to have OTAs and eventually minicamp and training camp. And this is going to be a situation where maybe Russell Wilson does win the job, but eventually as the season starts, if he does not play well, the fans in New York, New Jersey are going to be calling for Jackson Dart to be out there on the field. The last thing about the Giants, if they really want this to work, and especially for Jackson Dart, I would hope that they give Brian Daboll a longer leash of a year, not just 1 year, where we know they're on the hot seat. If they have a 7-win season coming up, I think it would be irresponsible to move on from him and just have Jackson Dart over there with a new head coach who probably didn't want him. So I think that's a big part of this as well. Third quarterback, Jalen Milroe to Seattle. Real quick with some of these. Seattle signed Sam Darnold. They signed Drew Lock. They traded away Sam Howell during the draft here on Friday night. Jalen Milroe is a really intriguing situation for me, Ben, because Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, you look at Jalen and what he does have, which is the running ability, and you have the throwing ability, which is, like we said the other day, it's just a slingshot does not know where it's going. If you put him in that situation there in Seattle where it's like, hey, man, go do your thing over here and learn for now. Sam is our guy for at least 1 year. We mentioned this on the show about a month ago. The contract he signed, Ben, 1 year, $37.5 million. There's an out. There's an out. So there's a situation here where maybe Sam plays well and he becomes the franchise guy, or if he doesn't play well, now you have at least somebody in the building who could be a quarterback there as well, which I think makes it very interesting. John Schneider, their GM, for what it's worth, he's been there since 2012, I believe, 2011, somewhere in that range. Only 3 quarterbacks drafted in his history as a GM, which is crazy to think about. Russell Wilson, I think Alex McHugh is the other one. That's his name. And then Jalen Milroe now becomes the 3rd one ever drafted by John Schneider. So it says a lot that they really liked him over here in this draft. Tyler Shuck, I skipped over. He was the 3rd quarterback drafted over here. Will be 26 when the season starts. Pick number 40. I think the Saints like Jackson Dart more when it comes to quarterback 2 in this draft, but the Giants got him. They go with Shuck. It's an interesting situation as well because Derek Carr is there right now, but we spoke about his injury extensively here. I don't know if he actually has a real shoulder injury that should keep him out. I don't think he wants to be in New Orleans. Somebody brought it up to me. The Super Bowl was in New Orleans this past year. Derek Carr was nowhere to be seen in his own city. I just don't think he wants to be there. So I think it's a very interesting situation where Tyler Shuck comes in, and you have Spencer Rattler, and you have Jake Haener. Shuck, aside from Cam Ward, was considered the most day one ready. You could throw him out there, and he could probably figure this out. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar or whatever, but he's a guy who could handle an offense. So I think Kellen Moore probably liked that about him. And considering where this team is and where this roster is, I think he'll have a chance to start over here in his rookie year. Dylan Gabriel was the first of 2 quarterbacks drafted by Cleveland. We had Mike Renner on the show a couple of weeks ago. He loved the quarterback in this draft. And for Andrew Berry, I think he would tell you that was their number 2 quarterback in this draft after Cam Ward, because they clearly took him ahead of a lot of these guys over here in this draft. They had picks 33 and 36 in the second round. They passed on quarterbacks in both. I think it tells you a lot about how they thought about this quarterback class, and they were okay with taking Dylan Gabriel, who some teams didn't like. Mike Renner, who was a draft analyst for CBS, clearly did like him, and he's somebody who had a lot of playing time over there in college, 3 different places. Oregon, of course, he played more than Bo Nix, who everyone made fun of last year for playing a lot of football. So clearly they liked him, but of course, I'm kind of doing what the Browns are doing over here, but we're going straight to Shedeur over here because everyone was talking about the second quarterback that the Browns drafted and giving all the attention to him. Fascinating situation, Ben. Everyone had him in the first round. Some people were like, fine, maybe not first round, second round, but nobody saw fifth round coming. Nobody. Like, you cannot find me a single person who had fifth round coming.
Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker had him in the 5th round.
Did he actually? Former NFL tight end? Does he even work for a media company? Where is he at?
He was on a random interview and he was laughing and said he's a 5th round quarterback. He's going to go in the 5th round.
Was he saying it in a joking manner? Because if that's the case, I guess so. But
$1,000 bet.
I don't think anybody realistically thought that was a real thing.
Yeah, probably not realistically.
That's the crazy part about it. And I'll just go through some of it. I think with Shedeur, I think part of it over here, part of the problem at least, was conducting himself. And this is like hindsight is 2020, obviously, but conducting himself as a top 5, top 10 pick throughout the process, including his own camp, I think was a problem. Like, go back to the combine. He didn't throw. 2 quarterbacks didn't. I believe it was just 2. It was Cam and him. We were talking, and the media is part of it as well. I mean, we were talking about him as if he's this top guy, and the Titans are picking 1, they need a quarterback, and the Browns are picking 2, they need a quarterback, and the Giants are picking 2, they need a quarterback. And we were all like, yeah, he could wait till his pro day because he could do that. And I think we realized the pre-draft process went on that the way media people looked at him was way different than the way the NFL looked at him. And again, there were more things over here. I think there were interviews that did not go well. There were some interviews that did go well, but there were some that clearly did not go so well. And I think one thing also that I saw in videos of Shedeur, again, I'm not a scout, I'll never pretend to be, but you watch some of his games, maybe you could blame the offensive line, but he drifts back a lot. And I think when you see that, whenever he's under pressure, and I think when you see that happening in the college game, I think some people are like, in the NFL game, this guy's going to be eaten alive, which could be a problem as well. But again, 5th round was nowhere to be expected. Yes, there was a lot going on around him as well. Deion being the father. I mentioned this with Mike Renner when he was on the show. There were people in the NFL who mentioned this to me, not coaches, but scouts who were like, man, Deion has mentioned he'll only coach the NFL in the sun and like in the NFL. And if that's the case, if you're an NFL team and you're an NFL coach, are you drafting Shedeur and you're thinking like, man, like if I don't do well here, like Deion will want to coach him and eventually now I don't have a job anymore. I'm not saying that was a real thing, but I wonder if some coach in the NFL actually thought like that. Like, I really do wonder about that. But
do you think that's why the Cowboys didn't take him? I kept waiting for the Cowboys to be the team. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, the Cowboys
he was already connected to him
because $16 million a year for no trade clause and like 3 more years or 4 more years left from the contract. I think that's the reason. But I'm looking at some other teams. I do wonder about that element. But Shedeur not being a first-round pick, I thought he would. It did not surprise me he wasn't. But when he was not a second or third or fourth-round pick, that's when it's crazy. And like, I wouldn't call the first round a slide. I wouldn't even call the second round a slide. Once he got past that, this is one of the most astronomical slides we've ever seen in NFL history. And again, I think it goes back a little bit. Like, if you would have thrown it at the combine like Tyler Shuck did, and Tyler Shuck ran a 40 and ran like a 4.5, 4.6, which was like, whoa. Like, if you would have done all that, maybe it would have been a little bit different. Maybe that was part of it. You're not Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter or Cam Ward, who could, not do some of this other stuff that top prospect. Like, I don't think he was in that category. And he played himself as if he was. And maybe that played a part of it as well. But I was shocked about the 5th round pick. The Browns taking him, there's a whole question about that as well, Ben, about did Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want to do that? Because now you're looking at Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, who was the quarterback they liked, and then Shedeur Sanders and all of this. Deshaun Watson obviously is also there, but he won't be ready this year. But they're not carrying 4 quarterbacks on the active 53. One of those guys are getting cut after the season. So this is going to be a training camp in Berea, Ohio, which a lot of cameras and a lot of media and all of that, which I don't know if the Browns signed off on it. Maybe it was the owner again. I'm not saying it was, but the owner kind of admitted that he was a big part of the Deshaun Watson trade, and it was not the front office's fault. So I have a lot of questions about this one, and there's going to be a lot of attention in Cleveland going into this offseason. But Shedeur finally got drafted. I'm happy for him, and this Cleveland situation will be one we'll be talking about a lot of here moving forward.
Let's talk about one of the teams you had mentioned to me, the New England Patriots. They obviously, that team's looking a whole lot different than they were last year. Can you kind of dive into some of the moves that you liked and just the overall differences we're going to see on the field there this upcoming season?
Yeah, this is my takeaway number 2 over here. The Patriots and the offseason they've had so far really, listen, whenever a team makes a lot of, pickups over one offseason, it doesn't always work. I mean, I look back at Washington last year, that kind of did work. But you look at a team that found a quarterback last year in Drake May. They fired their head coach in Gerard Mayo. They brought in Mike Vrabel, who, ask anybody in the NFL, they love that hire in New England. They bring back Josh McDaniels, who you can have your opinions about Josh as a head coach. Josh as a coordinator is one of the best there is. Now he's working with Drake May. And now you look at all the additions they made this offseason. Yes, you could say they overpaid for some of them. I mean, Milton Williams, Harold Landry, Carlton Davis, Morgan Moses, Robert Spillane, Marcus Epps, Garrett Bradbury will be their new center. Matt Collins, the new receiver. Joshua Dobbs, who's the picture-perfect backup quarterback to have with a young guy in Drake May. Caleb on Chase on take a flyer on him. And then the draft, I mean, I loved their draft. I really did. Will Campbell, we spoke about him a lot over here on the show, but he is a classic Mike Vrabel guy. You could have your questions about if he has shorter arms or whatever. This is a guy who was a 3-year left tackle starter at LSU, loved by his teammates, unbelievable football IQ, somebody who we spoke about wore the 7 patch on his jersey, which is given to the most electric playmaker at LSU. An offensive lineman had it there. And this is somebody who loves football, bleeds football. You heard him when he was drafted. NFL Network did the interview with him. I think it was Jamie Erdahl. And he was like, I will die to protect Drake May. I mean, you want to have that type of a guy, and that is a perfect Mike Vrabel guy. So he is now your left tackle of the future. And really, you look at the offensive line as a whole, was so bad last year. Now you go with left tackle Will Campbell, left guard Cole Strange, center Garrett Bradbury, right guard Michael Onwenu, and then right tackle Morgan Moses. Is it the greatest offensive line ever? No. Is it an above average or good offensive line? It really is, especially compared to what Drake May had last year. And then the rest of the draft, I mean, second round, they traded down a couple of times. Trayvon Henderson in the second round. They go ahead and get the Ohio State running back. Love that pick for them. For some teams, he was running back 2 in this draft. Again, there's the value of where to take a running back, especially in a deep running back draft like this. But they got him there at the second round. I don't think they traded down, actually. I have to go back and check on that. But they go ahead and get a running back there in the second round. Wide receiver Kyle Williams out of Washington State in the third round. I know there are some people who love Kyle Williams in this draft. Chris Sims, who I respect his rankings. He had him as wide receiver 2 in this draft. So he falls in the third round for the Patriots here. And now they're receiving core with Stephon Diggs, a noob guy in Kyle Williams, and even like a Matt Collins, who is not, some superstar receiver, but a guy who is a fun guy to be around, who makes contested catches, even adding a guy like him. And of course, still having all the young guys from last year who didn't really work out for the most part as rookies, Polk and Baker, but you hope they could turn around this year. But now you have some guys in that receiver room, and then even Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia, getting him. He was somebody who I saw some mocks having him in the second round. They get him over there. Also in the third round. The rest of the draft as well, you go around, Brandon Swinson in the 5th round. Like, these are guys who they got who, at least the consensus board, when we look at it, they got some really, really good value. I mean, in terms of just fixing a roster in one offseason, the Patriots, I would argue, along with Tennessee, had a bottom roster in the NFL. The way they fixed it this offseason, and of course the coaching staff fixed it, they did as well. This is a team that I think could be, I don't know about playoff team this year, but I think those annoying, hard teams to beat, that's the Patriots this upcoming year. You could see a game, Bills versus Patriots, week 7, where Bills are favored by 9.5, and the Patriots are in the fourth quarter. Like, that's going to happen this year with this Mike Vrabel team with all the talent that they added. So I was a big fan of what the Patriots did over here in free agency and in the draft. And the roster building continues over here in the next couple of weeks and months because they have a top 3 waiver wire pick as well. So once roster cuts happen later on in the offseason and after the preseason, they'll be adding more talent to this roster as well. So I'm excited about the Patriots.
Another team that made a whole lot of moves during the draft was the Chicago Bears. What do you think about their roster moves that they made?
Yeah, this is number 3 for me. And just Bears as a whole this offseason, this was the biggest Caleb Williams. We saw some flashes last year. We want to see number 1 pick generational talent this year. And you look at head coach hire with Ben Johnson, obviously the number one head coach in this entire cycle. Then the work that they did on the offensive line throughout free agency with Drew Dalman at center, Joe Thuney, and of course, Jonah Jackson, 3 guys in the interior. Big problem last year, 60-plus sacks last year. That is something they're expecting to fix over here this upcoming season. And you look at their draft, I mean, you go out and get Colston Loveland, obviously in the first round. Kyler Warren was on the board. Colston Loveland is clearly the pick that Ben Johnson wanted in his offense. You pair him up with Cole Kmet. They're going to be using a lot of 12 personnel here in this offseason, like Ben Johnson did in Chicago, in Detroit, I should say. He'll bring that into Chicago. And then, of course, in the second round, getting Luther Burden, who we had Sam Monson on the show last week. He was talking about Luther Burden as he was a first round guy going into the college year, did not have the best year this past year at Missouri, of course. A lot of questions about effort and whatever it is. And you bring him into Chicago. Now you have DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, and of course, Luther Burden, of course, Cole Kmet, Colston Love, and that offensive line with that coaching staff. It's like Caleb Williams, show us now. So that was my big takeaway of Chicago. I mean, this entire last 2+ months, 3+ months, really since the season ended with the coaching search where they opened up their pockets. They opened up to pay Ben Johnson and his coaching staff, which is a lot of brilliant minds. And then what they did in free agency and all the trades and the draft, what they did was more like, hey, we drafted you last year. You showed us the flashes last year. You were in a really difficult spot where we had Matt Eberflus and, of course, Shane Waldron, and we fired Shane, and we fired Matt, and then we had Thomas Brown, and he became from quarterback, from pass game specialist to offensive coordinator to interim coach. It was a mess. This year, we're going to have normalcy, and we're giving you everything, and show it to us this year. So that was my big takeaway of Chicago, where this is a team that I think is going to be a very, very fun team to watch, and immediately becomes a team that I think if the offense clicks the way we expect it to, they could be a top 5 offense this year. Like, they could legitimately be that. So I'm excited about the Bears, and another team. I loved what they did throughout this offseason.
There were some bold moves, clearly, that took place in Jacksonville. What do you think about what they were doing there?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this on Friday morning's episode, or the live stream that we did on Thursday night after the first round was over. But new GM James Gladstone, right? He comes in. His thing is bold. When you speak to him privately, publicly, on press conferences, he loves talking about being different, being bold, and just being courageous, and like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And I look at him, that big trade that they did from 5 to 2. What a big trade that was, giving up all that they did, including a future first-round pick. This is a team that we talked about a second ago with, a team like the Titans in the AFC South. The Texans have won the division. The Colts have been very close. The Jaguars have kind of been a team where they made the playoffs a couple years ago. We have not seen the full potential of Trevor Lawrence. They paid him $55 million per year last year. This is a team that has a lot of players who they paid a lot of big money. And this new regime comes in, and they're like, we're going to try to make the playoffs this year, and we're going to add a lot of pieces in free agency, and we're going to go after getting one of the top players in this draft. They give up a lot, but I think the new philosophy in Jacksonville is similar to what it was in LA during those years where eventually they won the Super Bowl. It's changed a little bit over the last couple of years in LA, where now they're stockpiling picks, but they had all those years where they traded for Stafford, traded for Ramsey, traded for Von Miller. Even the early years, trading for Samuel Watkins when they started off over there. Like, they made a lot of big trades, giving up first-round picks, second-round picks, third-round picks. And I think that philosophy is kind of coming here to Jacksonville, where James Gladstone was a big part of the front office in LA. You look at their draft history, I pulled it up over here, like, they had so many picks in those second, third, fourth rounds over there, where fifth round, sixth round, where they were able to hit on it. I'm looking back at some of it. I mean, over the years, obviously, Cooper Kupp was a third-round pick. Puka Nacua was a fifth-round pick. But over the years, some of the guys that they've added, Jordan Fuller was a sixth-round pick. I'm going through it over here while doing this. Cam Akers was a really good running back for them a couple of years. He was a second-round pick. Ernest Jones was a really good linebacker for them. He was a third-round pick. You go through the entire list. John Johnson was a middle-of-the-round pick. Quentin Lake, really good DB, was a sixth-round pick. Kyron Williams was a fifth-round pick. Kobe Durant, fourth-round pick. Darion Kendrick, sixth-round pick. You go through the entire list over here. There are so many guys that they drafted in those late rounds over there who have come through and become guys for them. Byron Young, third round. Kobe Turner, third round. Steve Avila, second round. You go on and on. They're able to find these guys in the later part of the draft. And whenever they do have a first-round pick, like they did last year, they drafted Defensive Rookie of the Year in Jared Verse. And they didn't pick Jared Verse. They're trying to trade for Brock Bowers. Like, they have an eye for talent. James Gladstone was there all those years. He was a big part of that front office in LA when it came to finding those talent from college. So I think he's bringing that over to Jacksonville, where they're like, you know what? First round picks, it's okay. We don't need that. We're going to use our 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And frankly, I don't think they're done trading picks. I think throughout the course of this upcoming season in August, September, if they're playing well, James Gladstone is going to have the stones, per se, to go out there and actually trade those picks and get more players. I really do believe that. So they're going to go out there and do it. And this is a new era in Jacksonville where they're okay having those later picks and picking those guys. But if they have a guy they want to get, they'll trade a one. They don't care. And they clearly wanted Travis Hunter. They got Travis Hunter, and he's going to be a big part of that future now with Lawrence, with Brian Thomas, with this new Liam Cohn coaching staff. And I'm excited for it. I really like the bright, young guys, new executives in the NFL. We've had those older guys for so long. We've had this new wave of young GMs coming in, and Gladstone is now the next wave as well as the 34-year-old guy coming in and being bold, and I like it.
Dude's playing real life Madden. I'm very jealous. All right, where do you want to go next?
Yeah, so speaking of that, let's just go over to another thing over here. I mean, one thing that we saw in this draft is kind of, is part of the Jaguars as well. We saw 2026 first-round pick changing hands over here. And going into this draft, Ben, every single team had their original pick, all 32 teams, right? Which was the first time in a very long time. The draft starts, Jacksonville trades their first-round pick to Cleveland. And, of course, in the bottom of the first round, we see Atlanta, shockingly, trading their first-round pick to the Rams, who of course we spoke about as well. And now those two teams have 2 first-round picks going into 2026. So I want to speak about both those teams specifically. Cleveland, first of all, I think we all know the situation they're in with Deshaun Watson, where they're still paying him this year and next year, and it's not easy for them. I think it's they have over $130 million in cap dollars that have not been accounted on their salary cap. I mean, that is a very difficult situation here. So for them now having 2 first-round picks next year, that at least lets them navigate over here where they're able to add more young talent. They obviously got a lot of picks from Jacksonville in that trade, getting more young, cheap talent on this team. But also, you go into this year with Pickett, Flacco, Gabriel, and Sanders. If all those guys just don't show you enough here in year one, now you have 2 first-round picks next year in what scouts believe is a better quarterback draft class. So you're able to do something next year where it's like, I know they drafted 2 guys this year, but if you don't love them, at least you have the ammunition next year to do it. And if you get the quarterback, now you have 2 first-round picks to add more cheap talent as well, while you're still paying this enormous Deshaun Watson contract, which has been a problem for so long. So I think that element of it, I don't think they love trading our number 2. For weeks on weeks, they had no plan on trading it. Like, they told teams, well, listen, but we're not planning to do it. Jacksonville came in, Gladstone came in, they gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, they did it. So it happened. But for them now, like, they're looking at a situation right now where they got to add cheap, young talent here. And having these picks over here is going to let them do that, whether it's at quarterback or different positions. They have to reset a little bit, and they are. They're planning to win here in 2025. It won't be easy. They got Myles Garrett back. I mean, they did. I mean, they told him something here that made it work. But they're going to try to win this year. But this is about the future as well for Cleveland. As for the other team, the Rams are also very interesting to me. I mean, we spoke about the FDM picks for them, but they've changed the philosophy here where it's now save them picks. And this is now less needed Sean McVay. I think they also realize their situation where Matthew Stafford is truly year to year. He's 37. The contract he signed this offseason, which still has not been filed, like we've mentioned a couple of times here. We have not seen the official numbers here, but the belief is it only has guarantees in 2025. So after this year, we're back to square one with Matthew Stafford again. They now have the ammunition as well in next year's draft. If they want to get that quarterback, they could. And I think you ask the Rams, ask Sean McVay, ask Les Snead, look at their Thursday night post-draft press conference. They did not expect to get that offer from Atlanta for James Pierce. They were not expecting a future one. It came along. They did it. It was too good to pass up. I think it's a blessing for them. Puts them in a really, really good spot where they could compete this year. They were so close last year to beating the Eagles. Compete this year, but also you're in a position for the future now as well. So after last year where you had no first round picks get traded, we now have 2 switching hands already, and we'll see if more big names become available throughout the course of the year and maybe more change hands, but we're finally moving with actually picks moving over here in 2026, which now throughout the 2025 NFL season, The Rams will be watching the Falcons very closely. And of course, the Browns will be watching the Jaguars very closely to see how they do every single week to see where that pick will fall.
Well, one of the teams that actually was pretty good at picking up first round picks, namely from the Los Angeles Rams, was the Detroit Lions. What did you think about what they did over this past weekend?
So yeah, the Lions were another one over here as we keep on going through my takeaways. And the reason this one was interesting for me because the Lions, we know how good they draft over the years. I mean, Brad Holmes has proven himself. Like, don't question me. Do not. Right? Remember the Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta draft. Everyone was like, "What are you guys doing?" Everyone was giving them failing grades. Of course, those guys were all amazing. Their first, from their first three picks, there was Tyleik Williams at pick 28. Tate Radledge at 57, then Isaac Tesla at number 70. I want to look at two of those guys specifically. Tyleik Williams was not somebody who was talked about as a first-round pick in this draft. He's an exceptional run stuffer, but the Lions taking him there, I found that to be very interesting because they clearly saw something with him where it was like, no, we're taking you in the first round. Again, it's very reminiscent to me when they took Jack Campbell, when they took Sam Laporta, when they took Jahmyr Gibbs, where everyone on the consensus board, I don't have the consensus board in front of me, but Tyleik was not at number 20. I'll tell you that much. He was nowhere close to that. So them taking him there, they clearly saw something, that scouting department, Brad Holmes in particular, Dan Campbell, where it's like, no, we're taking him here. The other one that was the most interesting to me was Isaac Tesla, the wide receiver out of Arkansas, round 3, pick 70. Consensus board, he was somewhere in the mid 100s, I would say. If I have to go get the exact number, but he was there. The reason it's so interesting to me because they aggressively traded up to get him. They gave up a third-round pick in this year's draft and 2 third-round picks in next year's draft to the Jaguars to make sure they get Isaac Tesla here in this draft. So that one in particular, I mean, they've been looking for a guy across from Amon-Ra St. Brown for the last couple of years, I would say. Like, they've had guys. Josh Reynolds was there. They tried a few different people there. Tim Patrick last year. They saw something with Isaac Tesla. For them to go out there and trade 3 third-round picks, including 2 next year, to go up to number 7 in the third round to go and get him, I would be watching Isaac this entire rookie minicamp, into OTAs, into training camp. I think he could start for them. If they're trading that much for them and going into the third round with this scouting department, which is so good, I think that is one to watch over here as we get into training camp eventually in August.
I did pull it up while you were talking through it. Tyleik is 100 and not 100, 42, and Tesla 170 on the
There you go.
consensus board.
So they took him at number 70 at 1 set. So there's something there.
100,
I'm not
100
doubting.
spots ahead of what would have been projected.
Exactly. So I'm not doubting the Lions ever again. After these last couple of years, the way they've drafted, arguably the best in the NFL. They saw something of those two guys specifically to make them go and take them that early, and especially trade up for Tesla. There is something there that we'll be watching Lions games this year. They'll have their 6 primetime games on Thanksgiving. This guy will be making plays and will be like, oh, that makes sense now. So yeah, that's one takeaway of the Lions that I don't know how people picked it up, but that was one for me where I was like, that's interesting.
4 more to go. What's up next?
Yeah, so let's go over here to a different team over here, and that is the Denver Broncos. I want to talk about them over here because this is a team that I think in the first round, 9 out of 10 mock draft, I would say, had them taking running back, maybe 10 out of 10. Whether it was Hampton or Henderson or trading up for Genty, everyone had them taking a running back. Some had them taking Colson Loveland, which was never a real thing, but everyone had them taking a running back. First round comes along, Hampton is there, Henderson is there, and they're like, we're taking Jahdae Barron, the Texas versatile defensive back, which was super interesting to me because he was somebody who I think they thought would go earlier. He did not, and they were like, hey, he's on top of our board. Listen to the board and take him. But just looking at this Broncos defense, man, this is a defense that was one of the best in the NFL last year. Vance Joseph is one of the best defensive play callers in the NFL. I just want to go through defense quickly. Zach Allen, DJ Jones, John Franklin Myers, and Nick Bonino as your 4 guys on the defensive line. Linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, they signed this offseason. I know there's a report about an injury. He should be fine. He'll miss some time, but he'll be back somewhere around training camp or before the season starts. Alex Singleton and Jonathan Cooper are the linebackers as well. And the secondary is insane with Patrick Surtain, Barron, who they drafted, Hufanga, who they signed this offseason, and Brandon Jones on the back end. This defense is absurd, like absolutely absurd. They were amazing last year. The additions they made this offseason now with Barron, Greenlaw, and Hufanga, they literally shored up the defense. And we had Zach Allen, spotlight guest over here about a month ago. he talked about just how united that defense is, how incredible the defensive line is, and how awesome it is to have a secondary of Patrick Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year. This defense is going to be hard to go up against week in and week out. So I love the Barron pick. I didn't think he would be there at number 20. I think they realized he was there and they were like, you know what, we love these running backs, but we got to take him over here. I think they thought Miami would take him at 13 and they didn't. And once he was there, they were like, we got to take this guy. And of course, they get Harvey, the running back out of FSU or FAU or one of the FUs or whatever it is. Sounds so wrong. One of those colleges over there in the draft. But yeah, so that's the situation there of Denver. I love their defense, and it's going to be one of the tougher defense in the NFL this year. But we got to fix that up.
UCF, University
yes.
of Central Florida.
Yes.
And he is by way of Virginia. He played there first.
We go. I get all the Florida colleges. They're too much for me, but yeah, that sounded a little.
There's a lot of schools in Florida. There's a lot of schools in Florida.
UCF, right. FSU, whatever it was. Yes, that's what it was.
Okay. All right. What's next?
Yeah, let's keep this moving here. Let's stay in the AFC West. The Raiders over here. The Raiders' offense, I think, could be sneaky fun this year. I don't know if people are talking about that, but Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, Geno Smith comes in as the quarterback, and I know some people roll their eyes with Geno Smith. I mean, I know people roll their eyes at Pro Bowl quarterback as well, but like. He made things happen in Seattle. Say what you want, but they won 10 games last year in Seattle with Geno Smith. And he's a really good quarterback. I know he's up there in his age, but he is a quarterback who is just good at what he does. And now you bring him in with Jacoby Myers, one of the most underrated receivers in football. Brock Bowers, who just had one of the greatest tight end seasons in NFL history. And I think they still have to add another receiver at some point. Maybe they'll look at the receiver market of the year. Maybe a guy like Keenan Allen or something. But they did draft a guy out of TCU as well. But adding Ashton Genty into the mix as well, this could be a sneaky fun offense, I think, this year. I mean, Chip Kelly, say what you want about him as a head coach in the NFL. When it comes to him, he is somebody who just gets your offense moving and makes things happen. He did it in the NFL early on in Philadelphia. Of course, he did it all those years in college, national championship last year at Ohio State. He'll make things happen. I think this Raiders team, people try to maybe, pick some holes of the offensive line. This was an offensive line that was good last year. Like, they really played well last year. I know people were like, oh, take Member or whatever. No, like, this was good. DJ Glaze was a good player at right tackle. Colton Miller was a really good left tackle, really settled in as the year went on. Like, this is a team that I think could be sneaky good throughout this year. And I wouldn't discount as well, just overall, this personnel staff with John Spytek and everyone else in that front office. This is one of, when it comes to evaluations and scouting, this is one of the better teams in the NFL. So when you look at all the guys that they drafted, look at the guy they got in undrafted free agency, 15 guys, there's going to be guys there who will be making an impact this year. Like, I have a lot of respect for John Spytek. In Tampa Bay, he was there for a long time. They were one of the better drafting teams in the NFL. Spytek played a big role in that. So I look at them and what they did this offseason throughout all of it. I think it's a team that could be really good this year, at least on offense. It could be sneaky fun. I mean, the AFC West as a whole, we spoke about the Broncos a second ago. We know the Chiefs. We know the Chargers. Chargers will be fun as well. This AFC West, in my mind, is going to be a really, really fun division this year.
Well, let's go the opposite of fun. I know what your next two are, so I'll let you go whichever you want, but things were not fun over the last few days for the Atlanta Falcons.
Kirk Cousins is where we're going to talk about over here. I mean, Kirk Cousins, I think the Falcons, they made it clear, we're not going to, cut you. We're going to look for a trade partner. We're going to try to buy a draft pick. I mean, if you look at the entire draft and what happened throughout all of this, I look right now, I do not have a landing spot for Kirk Cousins. All the teams that needed quarterbacks did something throughout this process. The only one that did not was Pittsburgh. And of course, I think they're kind of waiting for Aaron Rodgers right now. If Aaron does not happen there, maybe that becomes a possibility. But Titans, of course, draft Cam Ward. You look at the Browns, obviously they go out there and sign Joe Flacco a couple of weeks ago, and they draft Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. You look at a team like the Giants, they go out there and get Jackson Dart on top of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. There is no real logical destination out there for Kirk Cousins right now. The only one is Pittsburgh, and I don't think Pittsburgh right now has him as option A. I think it is still Aaron Rodgers. So Kirk and his agent, Mike McCartney, they made it clear to NFL teams that we're now waiting on no trade clause until after the draft to see where everything settles. There is no logical, hey, slide in and become the starter. There is no team like that right now. So Maybe he just stays in Atlanta right now. He did report to volunteer workout. I think was strategic, trying to make it a bit awkward there, but there is no place for him right now. And right now, Atlanta is going to go into this rest of the offseason with him on the roster. $27.5 million being paid to him fully guaranteed this year, $10 million fully guaranteed already next year. And maybe an injury happens somewhere and you end up trading him there and get some value. Maybe you get a situation where Aaron Rodgers does not go to Pittsburgh and he becomes an option there. But this was not a good week for Atlanta in terms of finding a Kirk Cousins trade plan. And right now he's going to be there, which I think is awkward for Michael Penix. So this is going to be a very interesting situation of that as well.
All right, and now it's time to talk about the dumbest thing from the weekend, which also sort of has to do with the Atlanta Falcons. You want to talk about phone calls?
Yeah, phone calls leaking. First of all, I hate that it happened. I mean, I know some people found it funny, but let's just be real for a second. All these college prospects, they wait for that phone call. Like, this is their dream. And for Shedeur Sanders, obviously, which was the viral one, but even a Tyler Warren who got a call when the Jets were on the clock. I got text from other agents who also were like, yeah, our guy also got this, but it just didn't make sense when it happened. So we knew it was a prank. But the Shedeur one, like, he actually believed it. Like, he thought that was Mickey Loomis. He was like, yeah, let's make this legendary. Like, I don't care what you think about Shedeur Sanders. That's messed up. And I think you should be an adult and realize that's messed up. Obviously, we all know where it kind of came from now. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator for the Falcons, the interim head coach for the Jets this past year, former DC of the Jets as well, highly respected around the NFL. His son ends up having, this is the Falcons side of it. This is their story. The NFL is investigating, but they were like, his son came home, saw an unopened iPad, which had the NFL email, which had the phone numbers on it. He took it down, took it to his friends in a college dorm, called them, and made it all happen. That's the story they're giving. Jeff Ulbrich is going to be staying in Atlanta. They're going to say it's not his fault. And maybe it's not. This is just a 20-year-old being stupid. It could be. But I think the bigger story here is just how the NFL is going to handle this moving forward, because are they just going to be like, you know what, this is the way we do it. We give the phone numbers to every single team. The way it works for people who don't know is that the NFL, they send an email to head coaches, GMs, personnel, college directors, and some other people throughout the personnel staff, including some coaches as well. That's how Jeff Ulbrich got it, with all the phone numbers. Players who are a little bit more high profile, like Shedeur Sanders, they actually get a completely separate phone, which is what Shedeur Sanders got. So I saw a lot of people saying, oh, why was there so much outrage that it happened to Shedeur, but no outrage last year that happened to Cooper DeJean? Well, there should have been outrage as well over there, but Cooper DeJean had his regular phone number. Shedeur actually had an NFL phone number that was made for him, which they gave to him on Wednesday because they knew how high profile it is and they didn't want that situation happening to him. But it still happened. So I don't know what the NFL does about this, whether it's sending the email of numbers to less amount of people because they send it to so many people, or is it, I saw somebody mention, like, have a situation where whoever calls a player have like a code word that they have to say at first that only the teams know, something about it to make this thing not happen anymore. Is it silly? Is it weird? Is it crazy to talk about this? Yes. But at the same time, this is what NFL prospects wait for. So I think it's kind of messed up, and I wonder what the NFL does about it. They're still investigating the Warren situation. Warren's camp and his people, his agents, have reached out to people to say that the number does flow to Jeff Ulbrich's son. So they believe it was the same person because, stupidly, they didn't even use the star 67. They actually called from their regular cell phone. I actually have the number on me over here. That's also foolish. But again, 21-year-olds being 21-year-olds, I guess. But we'll see what the NFL does about this. And also, though the NFL is also upset about tipping picks and all that happening on Twitter, which endless people do. If they want to fix that, there's also a way of doing that. They've never tried to do that as well. So NFL has a lot of things to fix with the NFL draft. I saw Roger Goodell talking about splitting the draft in the first round. I think people like me and other people would appreciate that as well, because there's too much airtime of nothing going on, which would help as well. So I think the draft is great. It's my favorite 3 days of the entire NFL calendar, at least the offseason. But there are ways of making it better from the prospect side, from the media side, from the watching side. I think they could definitely make it better. I really do hope the NFL does that, because I think it would make the spectacle even better.
But with all that being said, we went through the positive, went through the negative. We'll go more through this tomorrow as well with the ins and outs of the teams and all that stuff. It was a pretty fun first round. And the rest of the draft was interesting too. It was actually very, from an entertainment standpoint, I thought it was entertaining. I thought there was a lot of storylines. You know, the NFL can only dream up so many scenarios, and it's really ultimately down to the teams what they decide and how that narrative changes from one pick to the next. But even a guy like Colston Loveland going ahead of Tyler Warren, it was like, we all had it in our head like, oh, well, Warren's the first tight end off the books. You know, all of us thought Jalen Walker was going to be going at number 8. Teteroa McMillan ends up going there. We started Mason Graham's going to fall into the teens. Just kidding. The Browns actually like him there at 5. Like, there was a whole lot of intrigue. The trades that took place. Now seeing what's going to happen next year. Like, I hate that I'm never the guy that's like, man, I wonder what's going to happen next year. What's the 2026 mock draft already? But I'm like, man, I enjoyed this so much. Like, that's where my head goes. I'm like, this isn't actually an entertaining event. That's why you see over, what was it? What were the final numbers? 12 million people?
More than NBA Finals, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, which is an insane thing to say. So, with all that being said, fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Fun draft for sure. I just think, no doubt about it, fun. A lot of surprises. It's awesome. I do think speeding it up and fixing some things would help.
Oh, I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's
like,
fun.
I like the pace of rounds 2 and 3 and 4, all of it. Right, that's fun. Like the first round, I think it just drags too long, and Roger Goodell acknowledged it. And for the NFL, does not like people tipping picks, and there's a lot of people who do it. I guarantee they'll stop doing it if you guys move it a little bit. So that's definitely part of it. But overall, very, very fun draft. I loved it. A lot of surprises. It's the best 3 days of the offseason. And now we'll see where all these guys end up. And we're going to have a full recap of a lot of it here coming on tomorrow's show, the Tuesday special edition. No guest tomorrow. We're going to have our NFL Spotlight guest ramping back up over here as the offseason slows down. But we will see all of you here Tuesday morning as we talk more about the draft and more about the NFL as a whole. We'll see you then.